The planet Mars has been in the news recently because it is going to pass very close to us soon. So this might be a good time to talk about the red planet. The possibility of there being life on Mars has been a topic of speculation for more than 150 years. Ever since its canals were mapped by an Italian astronomer, Giovanni Schiaparelli, back in 1877. He drew the first reasonably realistic map of Mars, and it included a system of canali across its surface. In Italian, canali just means channels. Although most serious astronomers did not buy into this, the idea of an Earth-like planet, perhaps colder and drier, and probably without any Martians, endured right up to the beginning of the space age, when Mars was still thought to have polar ice caps and a reasonable atmosphere. It also showed seasonal color changes that some thought could be some kind of primitive plant life blooming. But in the 1960s, NASA's Mariner missions sent back images of something very different, of a cratered moon-like Mars. Both the polar ice caps and the atmosphere turned out to be almost pure CO2, and the density of its atmosphere was only 1/100th of Earth's. And the blooming plant life turned out to be only a lot of dust blown around by strong seasonal winds. In some ways, though, Mars had become more interesting. It had giant volcanoes, it had a vast maze of canyons, and it showed evidence of having had flowing water on its surface sometime in its distant past. And the possibility of living organisms on Mars could still not be ruled out. Now, you should realize that it is a lot easier to prove that something exists than it is to prove that something doesn't exist. So scientists continue to look under the Martian rocks. The Viking mission in 1976 included 3 biological experiments: the labeled release experiment, the pyrolytic release experiment, and the gas exchange experiment. None of these experiments were successful. That is, none of them produced clear results detecting life forms. Most scientists now agree that the experiments were flawed. All of the results can be explained as purely chemical processes that do not require the presence of life. However, there is now evidence, as I said, that Mars once had significantly more water, and now scientists are considering the possibility that the planet once had life, but that it went extinct when conditions on Mars got worse. A meteorite called ALH 84001 was discovered in Antarctica in 1984. And it is one of a dozen meteorites that scientists believe, because of their age and composition, came from Mars. But ALH 84001 is special. It carries with it 3 pieces of evidence for life on Mars. First, it carries polyclitic aromatic hydrocarbons, which is something that dead organisms often decompose into. And second, it has tiny carbonate globules that resemble mineral alterations that primitive Earth bacteria cause. And then third, it carries very tiny 10 to 100 nanometer ovoids that may actually be fossil bacteria. And all 3 of these pieces of evidence lie within a few micrometers of each other in a crack in the meteorite's surface. Together, they are strong evidence for the existence of life in Mars's past. But the real research on this is just beginning. Maybe we'll learn more when we've heard back from NASA's Phoenix mission.
Created using Powtoon.